They can hear us.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Dr. Tara Tuesdays. This is Dr. Tara, or I am Dr. Tara, and I am so excited as always for the opportunity to be with you all this evening. As you all can see, I have a lovely co-host with me named Lola. Lola is joining us today for at least for part of our conversation, and I'll explain a little bit more about that a little bit later. But we're going to be talking about practicing stillness in times of chaos, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the elephant, which is coronavirus. And when we talk about chaos, we're going to be talking specifically to this incident, but hopefully the things that we talk about this evening are going to be strategies that you can employ in your life, regardless of the situation. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome to Dr. Tara Tuesdays. Hey, Christina. She said, hey, Lola. Say hello, Miss Christina.
Hi.
So, welcome to Dr. Tara Tuesdays. If you like what you hear, please feel free to leave your email address so that we can add you to our newsletter, which will be coming out. Our first newsletter will be coming out this week. But I want to jump right into the conversation tonight. So, maintaining stillness, finding peace, finding calm in the midst of chaos. And the reason for Lola being here with me tonight, and we'll go into this more next week. Next week, we focus on parents and families. But during all of this, it's been a shift, it's been a change. And as a parent, one of the things that I noticed is that recently or lately, Lola has been having the need to stay extra close to me. So usually she's upstairs, she's entertained, but over the past week or so, as a parent, I've noticed a change in her behavior. And so when she asked if she could join me this evening, because the topic is something that impacts her as well as a parent, I want to teach her how to manage her anxiety and manage her fears in a healthy way. I invited her to be a part of the conversation. So I hope that you all will welcome her to the Dr. Tara community. She's already getting sleepy, so I don't know how long she will last, but I just wanted to say that and be as transparent as possible in our conversation tonight. When we talk about maintaining peace in the midst of chaos, one of the ways that we're going to lead this conversation is always from a mindful approach. And so I know for a lot of us that peace brings up anxiety. And I want you, for those of you who are watching, who are able to type in the comments, I want to make it personal. I want to have a very personal conversation tonight. And I'm going to start. So the past 2 weeks, my emotion, I think I have felt every single emotion from denial to anger to fear to anxiety to acceptance back to denial from anger, fear, anxiety, all of those things. And one of the things that I have been practicing or I have had to ramp up is my own self care. I have gone down the rabbit hole of social media, of news articles that are designed to well, for me, designed to provoke or promote anxiety and want me to keep everybody close to me. And so it really took me understanding or getting connected to my own brain body connection to understand what it is that I was feeling, and then to make a conscious decision to shift my emotions somewhere else. And so I want to just do a quick check into the Dr. Tara community and just see where everyone is. How have you been feeling the past week? We checked in last week. How have you all been feeling the past week? Because I want to invite those emotions in this space with us. As always, this is a safe space. And so I want you all to feel comfortable being transparent and honest in what it is that you've been carrying around, or what things have been making it hard for you, rather, to practice stillness. Miss Shamia says, hi, Lola. What things have been making it hard for you? So Tina, you've been saying up and down again, similar experience. Anybody else? That up and down feeling that we've all been experiencing. One of the things that I want to start with, Shamia says all over the place. All of the emotions, everything that we are experiencing. Christina, vivid dreams, broken sleep, worry about clients, all of the, yes, you are preaching to the choir. All of the things that we are talking about, for all the things that you are bringing in. Miss Tina says, hi, Lola. All the things that we are bringing into this conversation have everything to do with chaos, right? So chaos makes our fight or flight system get activated, gets overstimulated, and a lot of times we have moments of rest And I think that's what a lot of people experience. We have moments of stillness, and then it automatically, we go full force back into everything else that we've been experiencing. Or if you are like many people, you try to distract yourself. So some of us may have been trying to overwork ourselves, so trying to get deadlines met that may not have needed to be met, have tried to stay busy by doing things, have noticed more frustration with our loved ones. And so if that's the case, understanding what we can do in these moments to bring ourselves back to stillness. And so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is, how do we understand this beautiful brain-body connection that we have? When we have this brain-body connection, it lets us know when we start to feel emotions. And so I'm going to put it in the comments too. How does our bodies typically, or how does your body typically let you know when you're experiencing feelings of anxiety or anger or frustration? So before there's a behavior, and I want us to do some backtracking. Before there's a behavior, there is a thought, right? So before there's a behavior, there's a thought. Even if that thought only lasts for a split second, it's still there. And before there's a thought, there's a feeling. Now, many of us have been trained to ignore our feelings. Some of us have been trained to ignore our thoughts, and some of us don't even understand it until we get to the actual behavior. And so, Christina, like you said, I want to stay with that heart racing, irritability. So what that means is a lack of patience because I'm in survival mode. Christina, hey, welcome to the live. And so understanding that, how do I start to slow myself down? How do I start to bring myself back to a place of stillness? Whenever we notice that we're experiencing like our heart racing, one of the things that I'm a big fan of, one that you all already know, I've been talking about it for the past 3 weeks, is self-talk, literally talking ourselves through situations. When you notice that your heart is racing, you can literally put your hand over your heart and do some deep breathing, and then also do some affirmations like, I am calm, I am protected. I feel safe. It's okay. Whatever it is that you need to tell yourself in the moment while touching or placing your hand over your heart literally works to help bring your heart rate back down. And so when we start to notice brain body disconnect, we want to start to bring that back together. One of the other things that we can do in these times too, when we think about self-talk and self-care and getting ourselves through moments of chaos, practicing stillness, is reminding ourselves that we have done this before. We have done this before. And I know that it hasn't been to this magnitude. It's a much smaller scale. But yes, we have practiced moments of stillness when we did not want to, when it was not necessarily convenient for us. And so, for example, when we've had to be quiet so that someone else can do some work, or someone else can go to sleep, or someone else has to cook, and we've moved ourselves or removed ourselves out of a situation, we've practiced moments of stillness. And in those moments, we've probably benefited from that stillness too, that was requested of us. And so part of this work in practicing moments of stillness, and Tina, I see your comment, I'm going to come right to it, is how do we work to reframe what it is that we're already doing? And so when we understand that, what am I choosing to feel? And my thing with that, and I want to be very honest in this moment, is I'm going to encourage us to pick a side and throughout the day, set our intentions to stick with it. So there's something called segment intending it. And before I get into that, I want to go to Tina's comment, broken sleep last night, and then the anxiety kicked in. So one of the interesting things about our body, again, our body doesn't need a lot of sleep. Our body needs a lot of rest. And so when I have broken sleep, one of the things that is not happening, or the main thing that is not happening, is that I am not resting. And so when I am not able to rest, then my body is automatically activating that fight or flight system, where I'm activating that anxiety, right? Because my body is in the mode of survival. My body is looking for things that are going to help me decide whether or not I need to take this thing, whether or not I need to fight this thing, whether or not I need to run from this thing, whether or not I have to freeze and take it. And so when we have broken rest, part of our mantra or part of our routine for sleep has to become, what things can I start to implement throughout the day that prepare me for rest? Right? What things can I start to implement through the day that prepare me for rest? And so when I have a night that results in me having broken sleep, and Tina and Christina, you all shared a similar experience. So that vivid dreams, the broken sleep. When I have a night like that, and Christina, for yours, oftentimes vivid dreams come in when I am pushing myself to the max during my waking hours. And so my body or my brain doesn't have a chance to kind of calm down and reset or process. And so all of that comes out in my sleep. All of that comes out. And so understanding that, meaning that how can I start to incorporate these things during the day? How can I start to incorporate moments of rest during the day so that when I am going to sleep or when I'm preparing myself for the act of sleep, I'm less likely to wake up and I'm more likely to go into through all of the stages or all the cycles of sleep that result in rest actually occurring. And so when I understand that, part of that means how am I spending my waking hours? And so one of the things that I'm going to encourage us to do is starting tomorrow, from the moment you wake up, decide how you want to spend your day. And when I talk about deciding how you want to spend your day, I'm not talking about a to-do list. I'm talking about your emotional state of being. I want you to set your intentions for your emotions. That's it. That's it. What is it that I want to feel today? How is it that I want to feel today? And I want you just to choose between 1 and 3 emotions. If your emotions have been all over the place, then I would suggest only choosing one emotion. Choose one emotion. So for me, one of the emotions that has been important for me over the past few days has been clarity. Right? I want to feel clear about my decisions. I don't want to make decisions about going here or there, or I don't want to be stuck, right? I want to be clear. When I choose to go to the grocery store, I want to be clear about what it is that I'm getting. I don't want to be rushed. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel scared. And so understanding all of these things, I noticed that so many of you are putting in the comments that Lola is going to sleep. She's practicing stillness, okay? Learn from, if those of you who are parents, learn from your children. They are great mindful communicators. And so understanding how it is I want to feel. And so when we do that, then I'm choosing to set my emotional standpoint and choosing to go into that direction. Also be very clear about where your which emotion is leading you. So I always say, and those of you who have been rocking with me for so long know, and we only have 2 emotions, love and fear, right? Love and fear. Choose the emotion that's going to guide you through this. And a lot of times we think that fear is reactionary, and it is when there is danger and when there's worry and when there's concern, and it serves a purpose. It serves to be an alert to our bodies for which we use as a basis to make decisions. It is not designed for us to use to make as a basis to control every facet in every area of our life. And so as we think about going through moments of chaos, which we can't avoid, right? This is a life situation that none of us would have planned, none of us would have imagined. But when we think about going through these situations, I have to decide which emotion is going to guide my way through. So when we think about fear, when we break that down, for those of you who are joining us, I want to break it down really, really quickly. Some common emotions that come from fear. Anxiety. Anxiety is a fear-based emotion, right? What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? That's what a lot of us are experiencing, right? What if I go to the store and this happens? What if I do this and this happens? What if I do this and this happens? And so understanding that with anxiety, we never really get to a response. We just get to more anxious answers. And anger comes from fear, right? So that irritability. And so understanding that too. Understanding that irritability that comes from fear, right? I'm fearful of someone impeding on my space or impeding on my time, and so everything has to be done right now. You're moving too slow. It's this rush that I have to get everything done. That fear that's driving me. Kizzy, thank you for the book recommendation. And so when we think about that, those are fear-based emotional responses. And so what I want us to choose is, okay, if that's what I feel, I can acknowledge it and I can own that rather than having the behavior come out, right? So again, behavior is a result of thought, which is a result of emotion, right? Rather than having the behavior come out, and after the behavior comes out and I've pressed out my best friend, I've yelled at my children, I've shown up this, I felt that loss of control, right? let me back up. Let me do a reflection exercise and see which emotion led that, and let me acknowledge that emotion. I feel scared right now. There is power in owning our emotions. There is power in owning where we are, right? That gives us the baseline from which everything else can come from. That gives me a baseline from where to start. And so when I acknowledge that, I feel scared, right? I feel scared. Then I can also then say, and I want to choose to feel something differently, or I am choosing to feel something differently. Or if I feel like I can't choose, right? If I feel like the fear and irritability or the anger is there, then even the acknowledgement of, I want to feel something differently, or I'm willing to feel something differently. And then, Christina, I want to stay with this fear part too, because when we talk about the expectations around productivity during a time of crisis. So I don't know if any of you have seen the meme that says, you're not, like, this is not a productivity contest, this is a pandemic. And I believe in that. Like, I have not been the best like homeschool teacher. I mean, I started this week. But before this week, one of the things, and if you didn't catch our Facebook Live last week with Randy Green, please go back and watch it, because he's an administrator in Prince George's County, and we talked about just owning and holding the space for our own social emotional development and for our children. Like I said when I came on, Lola is here with me because her emotional needs lately, because of all the change, because she is privy to conversations and news stations, her pull has been to be close to me. And I want to honor that, because in this moment, I'm giving her what she needs. I'm feeding into her social emotional development. I'm teaching her that in moments of fear and in moments of uncertainty, I can be consistent for her. And I think that's so important for us to give to ourselves first before we give it to anyone else. Right, before we can give it to anyone else, I have to create my own safety net for me, so that I then can model that behavior for someone else. Because if not, we'll just kind of be going through the motions, and then we'll just kind of, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but you show up for other people, and then you get in your house and you just stare at the wall, right? You just stare at TV. You just get on social media at 7 o'clock, and you look up at your phone, and it's 1 a.m. in the morning. And so when we think about that, and Kizzy, I want to go to your comments. Sometimes I'm uber irritable when I'm tired, but I can't identify a fear associated. So you don't have to. Just by saying, I feel scared, that's enough. I don't have to. One of the things about our emotions is that oftentimes our emotions kind of lead to other emotions, right? It takes us down a rabbit hole. And so if we're not mindful, if we're not careful, then it can take us somewhere where we don't want to go, or we don't have to go. I'll say we don't want to, but we don't have to go. And so if I can just own that I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling sleepy, if I can own the tiredness, whether or not it's an emotional tiredness, or whether or not it's a physical tiredness, right? That way I can kind of tend to what it is that I need. If it's an emotional tiredness, then what would help me get energized, or what will help me rest? If it's a physical tiredness, what can I give myself physically that will help myself to calm down? So I don't necessarily have to identify, I don't have to dig deep in the emotions. I can just read it at the surface level if I can give myself one of the emotions. And so understanding the need to process that fear and own it, and then decide and choose if we want to feel differently first. And it sounds funny, but I want to stay with that for a moment, because we have to acknowledge those moments where we're choosing fear, right? We have to acknowledge those moments when we're choosing fear. So recently, someone sent me an article, and from the headline, I knew that I did not want to read the article about what's going on and the projections that everyone is making. And what did I do? I clicked on the article. I chose fear, right? Fear didn't choose me. I had the opportunity to shut it down. I had the opportunity to choose something else. I chose fear. And I'm big on owning that, because a lot of times we choose fear, it triggers thoughts, it triggers behaviors. We're doing these behaviors, and then we're wondering, how in the world did I get here? And when we back up, we can see, I chose this emotion, right? I chose this emotion, which led to me thinking these fearful-based thoughts, which led to me doing these behaviors. And so understanding when we choose to go in the direction of fear. Now, Now, fear during this time, like I said, is normal. It's a normal response to an abnormal reality. And so, Christina, I see your comment about fear being a choice. What I'm saying, I want to break that down a little bit more. Fear is a natural response to a danger, right? So this is in no way downplaying what we're all experiencing. The pandemic, pandemics are dangerous, right? We should feel fearful. We should feel anxious. What I'm saying is, in these moments where chaos is occurring, where fear is a natural response, what we want to do is choose to implement strategies that will help us feel less scared, less anxious, still feel moments of peace, and still feel moments of stillness. And so, Shamika, your comment, even my 2-year-old can sense that something is different. Absolutely. Babies and toddlers are the most mindful creatures on the planet, right? They breathe the best, they identify their emotions the best. And so understand, that's great that you're modeling for her and using more explicit language so that they then have the words to use to own what it is that they're feeling, right? They can't say, seeing this makes me feel blah, 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 blah. Off the bat, they don't have the cognitive processes. But by us modeling this, mommy's scared right now, or I'm feeling anxious, let me do this, right? I feel anxious, it makes me feel this way, let me do this behavior. And so when we do that, we're choosing to not feed into the fear, not go with the fear. But the opposite of fear is love, right? Only 2 emotions we have, fear and love. Every other emotion that we experience comes from one of these 2 emotions. And so when we break down the emotion of love, let's break that down with some emotions. So love equals gratitude. One of the biggest ways to lessen anxiety is to come into the present moment. Anxiety, again, is a futuristic thought process, right? Those what if thoughts, what if this happens, what if this happens, what if this happens? When we come into a mindful place or a love-based perspective, I'm in the present moment. And so gratitude, right? What things can I be grateful for? So one of the practices that I have been doing with my children, both Lola and Donald, has been 3 things that you're grateful for. And hearing them talk about their gratitude has helped me to keep things in perspective for myself, has helped me practice my own self-care, right? What can I give thanks about in this moment? And so going to Tina's comment, understand that the quarantine plays a factor. Tending to yourself, but not being able to physically socialize is tough. It is. We are a relational people, right? I like seeing people, even if I don't like leaving my house. I like the option of seeing people, right? And so understanding that, and this goes into that self-talk, right? I have done this before. I have given people space, right? And so however it is, so when we talk about choosing a love-based perspective or a mindful perspective, it is about the self-talk that we're giving to ourselves in order to help us contain our emotions, right? And so what options do I have in this moment? What options do I have to feel gratitude? One of the biggest things for me, or the biggest emotion that comes out of this love-based perspective, is the emotion of hope. And for me, hope is so important. It's so important because it has to be the hope that whatever it is, where I am at now doesn't necessarily equate to where I'm going to be at, 3 p.m. Doesn't equate to where I'm going to be at 10 p.m. Right? I can wake up anxious, and that's the reality for many of us. I can wake up anxious. I can wake up in the middle of a thought, and then I can feel that thought. Right? I can go back. Okay, is this thought coming from a love-based perspective or a fear-based perspective? If it is a fear-based perspective, what is it that I need in this moment, right? Imagine talking to ourselves like we would talk to the person in our lives that is easiest for us to love. If they came to us and told us that they were feeling scared, or told us that they were feeling fearful, what would be our response? What words would we say to them? And self-compassion during this time, or that stillness during this time, is, can I say those words to myself? Again, one of the things that I said to Christina when we first started, placing our hands over our heart, literally doing this and repeating mantras, repeating our self-care talk. I am loved. I am safe. I am protected, right? I have my family with me. I have my children with me, right? Whatever it is I need to say in this moment that make me feel secure, that make me feel a little bit safer, because again, I want to bring that fear just down a little bit, right? If I'm able to bring it down, if it's at an 8 and I'm able to bring it down to a 7, and I'm able to maintain that 7, right, for 10 or 15 minutes longer than I was yesterday. That is progress, right? We're not talking about going from a 10 to a 0. I want to go from a 10 to a 9 for one day. And then I want to go from a 9 to an 8. I want to do this in a very mindful and compassionate way. And so, one of the strategies that we also want to do too is understand how we feel is in response to how we are using our energy. So again, I told you all, I have gone down the rabbit hole of, I'm reading this article, I'm on this site, I should have gotten off 5 hours ago and I'm still on this site. And so understanding that we can be in control of our emotions, meaning that the emotion, I can choose to step in that moment, right? I feel this emotion. This emotion is leading to a thought. This thought is leading to a behavior. I can choose to stop this behavior at any time. And when I choose to stop the behavior, I can choose to think something that is going to make me feel better in this moment. But that is the part that has to be the choice. I have to choose consciously to decide that I want to feel better. I have to decide in that moment that I want to feel better. We want to feel and own and set our intentions on what it is that we expect to feel during the day. So as we're writing our to-do list, right? As we're writing our to-do list, as we're writing, the things that we want to get accomplished during the day, I'm big on when we talk about moments of stillness, because our to-do list is about movement, is about motion, is often about transaction. I'm talking about our relations with ourselves. That's relational. And so, Kizzy, thank you. I have to be okay with the incremental process. Yes. And so understanding that when I set my intentions for the day, literally choosing 1 to 2 emotions, this is how I intend to feel today. And so checking in with myself, and someone said, Shanice, self-talk is very important. Checking in with myself during the day. How am I feeling right now on a scale of 1 to 10? If I can't do a 10 I'm big on scales of 1 to 3, right? I don't give myself up to a 10 because my anxiety at a 10 means that me and my children are going from this bedroom to the bathroom to the hallway. That's it, right? That's where my anxiety goes. And so, and it doesn't, and I'm a little bit jokingly saying that, but it doesn't work. And so understanding what we can tolerate and understanding how do we keep that in perspective, and keep that in a place where we can maintain a safe emotional space for ourselves. And so when we understand that, and Shamika, you hit it right on the head, our thoughts often become our reality, right? Our thoughts become our behaviors, right? Our thoughts become our behaviors, which becomes our reality. So you're absolutely correct. And so when we talk about moments of stillness, we're talking about getting in front of those things. So anxiety causes reaction, right? Anxiety causes us to react. When we talk about moments of stillness, we're talking about being proactive. And one of the things that this pandemic, that COVID-19 is giving us the opportunity to do is become proactive in our self-care. We don't have to be reactive. I know I can guess what the news stations are going to say about this, right? I can guess that. I can guess what I'm going to see on my timeline about this, right? I can predict that. And so understanding that, then part of our work is, and tonight, if you have time, I encourage you to do that. Tonight, if you have time, understanding what things do I need to put in place for my emotional well-being to set myself up for tomorrow, right? Understanding and assessing where we are now. Where is my anxiety right now, right? Is it a place where if I were to have one phone call with one very well-intentioned person, but it would set me over the edge, if I'm there, then I need to take a step back and put some things in place that bring my anxiety level down, that allow me to operate what we call within our window of tolerance, right? That window of tolerance, meaning that I can tolerate any emotion between this number and this number. But when it gets here, then I start to become hyper aroused. I become hyper sensitive and overstimulated. And I get into that, like we talked about, that rage and that panic and that uber irritability, like you said, Kizzy. And then once I get there, then the only other option for me to do is to completely shut down and become disconnected or engage in unhealthy self-care practices, right? So, I'm eating the entire pint of ice cream and all the cookies and all the bread and all of this, right? And I'm eating it in attempt. We don't oftentimes even know this. I'm eating it in attempt to help my body calm down. I'm eating it in attempt to help me become numb. Or I'm yelling at someone that I love that I normally wouldn't yell at or I want to protect, right? And I'm doing that because my body physically needs that release. And so if I'm able to get in front of that, then I can be proactive in choosing what activities I'm going to put into my day to help me to be still. Now, let's talk about stillness. So stillness goes against everything that we've been taught. And and I want to say that, and I want to emphasize that, and I want to own that, right? Stillness goes against a lot of what we have been taught recently, right? We are in a culture that is grind, right? You wake up, you grind, you're sleeping and you're grinding, you're doing this and you're grinding. All these things, you're just grinding, right? You're grinding in your sleep, right? You're taking pictures to show that you're grinding. And so stillness does not feel normal. And the question that I have for us tonight is, why is that? Right? Literally in our description of tonight's talk, I put the sentence, if the earth can reset itself, why can't we? Right? Why can't we? Why aren't we allowed to give ourselves that permission? I follow an author and social media celebrity, but also a regular, I guess, celebrity, Awesomely Loving. And she talks about something that struck a chord with me because it's something that I talk about often all the time. And she said, that we are in a society of sink or swim, right? So, when we are faced with moments of chaos or moments of pressure, we have this intense urge to decide, what, I'm either going to sink or swim. This moment is going to be the moment that defines me. And she was talking about a moment with her therapist. And her therapist said, well, why can't you just float, right? Why can't you allow yourself the opportunity to float? And so with that, understanding that in this moment, I can allow myself to be still. And Kizzy, I want to thank you for your transparency. Stillness is the hardest thing in the world for me. And your name means stay put. And so understanding that in this moment of stillness, what things I want to find. So, and Nikki, I want to go to your comment. And Zai, thank you for your comment too. A lot of us struggle with being still. I struggle with being still. And so, because it doesn't feel normal. We've been taught otherwise. We've been taught in corporate, and you said it too, being still often equates with the feeling of guilt, right? I'm supposed to be doing something else. I'm supposed to be, writing a bestseller right now. I'm supposed to be making sure, house is in tip-top shape. And the reality of it is that when we're faced with pandemics, when we're faced with crises, global crises, I'm supposed to survive, right? I'm supposed to survive. And Nikki, you said, because the things that we find most difficult, we try to avoid and run away from. And the thing about that is that why do we try to run away from ourselves? And understanding, and Randy, thank you for that. Avoidance and procrastination are coping mechanisms. So when I'm avoiding being still, when I'm procrastinating against these things, those are oftentimes coping mechanisms, meaning that in procrastination, a lot of times, and we can break that down a little bit, is meaning that I'm not lined up with the thing that I say I want, and that's okay, right? So rather than procrastinate, I can just spend some time visualizing, doing self-talk, doing strategies that help me to line up with this thing that I'm avoiding, right? Helping me to talk myself into this. Or if I'm not ready for it, giving myself permission to get out. One of the greatest, pieces of advice that I've ever gotten during my time in supervision when I was in graduate school was the expertise that we have over our lives. And Christina, you said, sometimes stillness can be seen as being lazy. And that's so true. And, that goes into the historical lens of people of color, right? How we've been characterized, work all day and still be called lazy, and so that has so many deep layers that we don't have time in this conversation to go through, but we will touch on it, trust me. And so understanding that when we talk about stillness, understanding what that looks like for us, understanding that rest has to become a part of self-care, understanding what it does as far as rejuvenation for not only our bodies, but also our spirits. And then also understanding the amount of stillness that we can afford to give ourselves. because so I'm not big on force, right? I'm big on don't resist any of it. And so if stillness is something that I resist, then part of my strategy becomes, what is it that I can allow myself to receive that I do not push away from, right? What is it that I allow myself to receive that I don't have to push away from? And so if it becomes 5 minutes during the day, 5 protected minutes during the day, then I'm going to start with that, right? It doesn't have to be, if I'm not I can take a whole day off and I can rest and I can Netflix and chill and I can do this, then I'm not going to do it, right? Because then it almost becomes a judgment in our stillness. And that's not self-care, that's self-judgment, right? And so we then judge ourselves or we compare ourselves, right? I'm not resting as good as this person. And even that becomes a competition, right? Versus an allowance. And we want to incorporate stillness as an allowance, stillness as something that we are offering and able to receive. And so it's two parts, right? So one part is the offering of it, right? So I'm offering this to myself. And the second part of it is my ability to receive it. And that goes into the permissions, right? I'm giving myself, and this, I'm big on this self-talk, I'm giving myself permission to incorporate this activity in my day, right? I'm giving myself permission to check out of this conversation. I'm giving myself permission to do this thing, to say this mantra, to practice 5 minutes of mindfulness. And so incorporating, like you said, right, and I hear that judgment in our own voice, and that is suffering. Yes, you know, we'll talk about these verbal tapes that we continue to replay, often that were given to us by very well-intentioned and well-meaning individuals, but they don't serve us. And so even if part of the permission, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because even if part of the permission is I give myself permission to think something differently about this, that is a part of self-care. That is a part of incorporating stillness into our day. And so when we do that, then I'm consciously making the choice to go towards what it is that I want. So one of the things, if I had, Lola said not on me, but if you all can envision a chart, a piece of paper, and if you have a piece of paper with you, write it out. If you have a piece of paper, I want you to draw a circle at the bottom of it, and I want you to draw 2 arrows coming out of that circle. And if you can envision with me, one arrow says towards, and one arrow says away, right? One arrow says towards, one arrow says away. And if we were to put the emotion, like we've been talking about, the emotion that I want to feel at the top of that, at the heading, and both of those arrows are pointing towards that. One is going towards that emotion, one is going away from that emotion. Giving ourselves, if you need something tangible to measure or to track your progress, then use that, right? So if my emotion is calmness and I find myself, you know, giving myself 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes are filled with judgment, or those 5 minutes are filled with me thinking of all the other things that I should be doing, I'm going actually away from that emotion, even if that intention was there. And so I need to go more general, right? If I need to go more general, I need to go where there's no resistance. And so if I can stay with that emotion of calmness, but if I can do something else, so rather than sit, you know, still and meditate for 5 minutes, maybe that's not my thing, but I can color. Or I can talk to someone who adds joy to my life. And when I get off the phone with this person, I feel calmer. I feel more centered. I'm still going towards that emotion. When I talk about moments of stillness, what I mean is that we're taking breaks out of the chaos. I'm giving myself a time out from this chaotic environment and allowing myself to check in, one, with me, right? I'm checking in after every behavior. I'm checking in to see how I feel. And then that leads us to, and this is probably our last topic for tonight, because I'm hoping I'm not giving too much information. I'm hoping I'm giving information that can be broken down, but that goes into something that we call segment intending, right? Segment intending, meaning how I intend to feel during each segment of my day. How I intend to feel during each segment of my day. Lola's about to do the church lay down on my lap, y'all, so give me 1 second. Okay. So how I feel during each segment of my day. And so with that being said, if I'm looking at my day, if I'm looking at how I want to feel, if I'm looking at how I am choosing to feel, then one of the things that I want to do is, for everything that I have to do today, I want to put, if I'm big on making to-do lists, then For every activity I'm doing, I want to write the emotional outcome that I intend to feel after this activity, and I want to write the emotion that I'm going into this activity feeling. So Corcoran, like you said, talking to your mother calms me. So if I knew that, on my to-do list, I'm going to call my mom today. What emotional state do I need to be at to talk to my mother? And what emotional state do I intend to leave this conversation at? That's how we get in front of our emotions, and that's how we become proactive about choosing our emotional state and working to stay within that state. And it helps to make us less receptive to conditions that we can't control. So there are going to be conditions that you can't control that happen throughout your day, and that's fine, right? I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the things that you can control. So for those of us who are parents, we know we're in remote learning, right? So what does that mean for me? That means that the moment I wake up, I know that Lola has a class meeting at this time and Donald has a class at this time. What emotion do I want to lead my conversation with them? As I introduce that to them, what emotion do I want to lead my conversation with them as I'm ending that conversation with them? When I notice that I'm going away from that, the conversation stops and I back up and I regroup. What is it that I need to say to myself, right? Do I need to remind myself that they're going through a change as well? Do I need to remind myself that, you know what, it's going to be Wednesday, and after Wednesday is Thursday, and after Thursday it's Friday? Whatever it is, I need to say to myself to get me back within my safe and calm window, that I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to try again. With that segment intending, how do I intend to feel as I'm going through the segments of my day? And so I see some people saying, I'm going to try this. Yes, test it out. Prove me wrong. I'm big on that. Test it out and see how you feel. Try it for a day. And if it works, even with some of the segments, try it for the next day and see how you want to feel. So many of us have been taught that our emotions are reactions. And one of the things that we can see is that we can choose the emotional state that we are experiencing our day in. And when I'm able to do that, and I'm also able to practice that stillness, I'm also able to incorporate that stillness. And so if we were to bring on rest and bedtime, right, because that was something that came up for so many people, how do I intend to feel when I go to bed? Right? How do I intend to feel? I want to feel calm. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel happy. Well, then what behaviors? So instead of putting bedtime down, I need to put behaviors down that add to those emotions. Bed is the outcome, right? Going to sleep is the outcome of those behaviors being implemented and executed in a way that brings that stillness into my life. And so as we get ready to wrap up tonight's session, I want to leave us with these 3 takeaway points. 1, self-talk, right? Reminding myself that I have done this before on a much smaller scale. I have given people space, right? We are giving the earth space to do whatever it needs to do, right? I have done that before. When people needed to sleep, cook, do work, I have excused myself. I have been able to retreat. I have been able to give space to those things in my life that have needed space. I can do this, right? So that self-talk, placing our hand over our heart, that self-talk that we need to do to get us through our day. Step 2, choose your emotion and own it. If you're waking up in a fearful state and that fearful state is triggering anxiety, is triggering irritability, is triggering anger, own it. Own it. Because again, we want to own that I'm choosing to go there, because if I'm choosing to go there, then that also gives us permission to choose to do something else. Right? So we don't want to be reactive to conditions. I want to be proactive to my emotional thought process, my emotions, my thought process, and my behaviors, 3 parts. And so when we talk about that, giving myself permission to own whether I'm coming to a situation from the emotion of fear or love, and choosing and owning everything that comes with that. If I'm coming from a love-based perspective, right? Those emotions that we talk about, gratitude, satisfaction, joy, hope, peace, connection, right? I don't have to be physically with you to feel connected to you. Then those emotions trigger thoughts, right? Those thoughts trigger behaviors that are done in that perspective. Own that and allow myself to receive that. And then the third takeaway is segment intending. And so understanding, as I do my to-do list, so many of us are transactional, and I don't want to take that from us. If I'm transactional, For every part of my to-do list, I'm adding an emotional part. And like Kizzy, you said, as an empath, that emotional piece is so important for us. And so as an empath, as an emotional person, as relational people, right? A lot of us are experiencing higher than normal emotions because we're not able to have this physical interaction. So our emotions are all over the place, and that's okay. That's normal. For every part of my to-do list, how do I intend to feel before I start this activity, and how do I intend to feel as I end this activity? And if I notice that my emotions are going somewhere that take me outside, take me away from what it is I intend to feel, again, that away and towards, giving myself permission to step back, process, regroup, right? So step back means I'm stepping back from the behavior, I'm processing the thought, I'm processing the emotion, I'm choosing, do I want to feel something differently? And if I can, giving myself to feel something differently. And if I cannot, right, if I'm stuck in that state of irritability, because that we have to acknowledge that sometimes we're going to be there too, right? Sometimes we're going to be there. That's okay too, right? I'm irritable today, and owning that I feel irritable right now. This is what I need. Or I feel irritable right now. I don't know what I need, but I'm willing to sit down for 5 minutes until I figure it out. And so giving ourselves that emotional space to receive that permission, that allowance to really incorporate that stillness in our life. So this is our Dr. Tara Tuesdays for today. Thank you all for allowing me and Lola into your home. So Al, you said you feel irritable, and so that's fine, right? That is fine. And so what is it that I need in this moment to lessen that? If I'm choosing to lessen that, if I may not be, I may just need to go to sleep, right? Sometimes the best thing for us to do when we're there, it's almost like, flying out of an airplane and you don't have your parachute. The reassurance is that you're going to hit the ground soon, right? So when we're there, if I'm irritable, if I'm in a space of irritability, what can I give myself to stop it right away? Sleep is usually the best thing, right? Or removing myself from people that can trigger my irritability to increase. So just staying with that place too. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate the Dr. Tara community so much. Thank you all for welcoming me and accepting me in your space. Next week, we are going to be back around talking to your children. Like I said, Lola's been having a hard time with this, and I want to bring that experience, and I want to own our experience and bring that in hopefully for someone else. So please make sure you tune in next Tuesday, April the 14th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all so much. As always, let's heal together. And again, if you have not joined our mailing list, please put your email in the comments or send me a DM, and Shamia will add you to our mailing newsletter, which is going out this week. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. As always, let's heal together. Peace.